大家好，我是陈立红，长岛华人协会的义工。我们这次呢是给大家举办一个讲座，因为现在的情况比较特殊，9月份开学以后啊，有好多不确定的因素，大家家长呢很担心小孩子的安全问题，有些家长考虑呢，就是是不是把孩子啊进行那个 homeschool 或者 homeschooling 家庭教育。这个概念呢，其实在美国呢行之多年了，可是对华人家庭呢，也许是一个新的课题，听到过，但是具体怎么操作不了解。因为现在的特殊情况呢，大家可能觉得也许有必要了解一下，到真的需要的时候，我们可以做那个 homeschooling 这一个事情。那么今天我们很高兴呢，请到了Martha，她是行之多年，2个孩子都是经过这个 homeschooling 是她自己教的，还有 Lydia 跟我们分享他们的个人经验。那在这之前呢，我们先介绍一下我们长岛华人协会的简单情况。我们长岛华人协会呢，大概是6年前成立的一个非盈利机构。他当时呢是那个我们的协会的宗旨呢，就是推动华人对社区公共生活呢参与。因为我们华人有个习惯，不大参与就是公共活动，我们做好自己的事情。但是在美国呢，做好自己的事情还不够，还要参加社区的活动，还要帮助大家一起搞好。所以我们呢，一个是这个目的，还有就是增加我们华人和其他族裔之间的相互了解。我们这个美国是个多民族社会，然后呢，为我们这边的华人呢提供我们劣属等级的服务，还有为华人呢争取一些平等的权益。我们过去做了好多事情，因为时间关系，我们不可能大家一个讲解。那么大家知道，好些听众肯定就知道我们华人协会这件事情，这里再跟大家介绍一下。那么大家的这个会员是自由加入，我们希望更多的听众啊或者社区朋友啊，不一定是华人，都可以参加我们这个组织，一起参加我们的服务。我们长岛华人协会呢，它呢在过去的6年中呢，我们举办了各种大小型的活动。刚开始主要是我们的文艺活动，比如美国每年的中国新年、春秋那个中秋节的那些大型的活动，是吧？把大家组织起来。人在海外，我们作为一个思乡之情嘛，所以的话，大家这个活动呢，解决了大家的乡愁，也得到了大家的支持。我们办了200多场各种各样的活动。好多活动呢是我们的教育活动，像我们今天晚上的活动呢就是其中之一。那么我们这个华人协会呢是这个得到了各个政府的好评。我们会长张国栋呢，他付了好多时间为大家提供了好多服务，这个我们这里不多讲，他也很谦虚。但是呢，大家都知道，我们那个微信里面给大家发了好多文章，公益性的文章，大概有1000多篇，阅读的观众超过，我估计是150万，这么多年来。最近呢，因为那个新冠病毒的挑战呢，大家都知道这个情况比较这个艰巨，所以呢，华人协会呢也做了好多工作，得到了社会的认可，主流社会呢对我们的评价也很高。长岛地区的12频道，我们的群长那 Karen 他也亲自的讲了好多次，出现这个公开的表示我们的长岛华人协会啊，这个积极的参与啊，给予我们很高的评价。所以呢，我们这里呢跟大家分享几个照片，这是我们活动的一部分，是吧？这个大家都知道，平时可以了解一下。那么我们长岛华人协会除了搞这些活动以外呢，我们还有一个主要的活动，就是今天晚上类似的教育讲座。我们因为好多华人家庭在美国，他关心的就是孩子的教育。我们请到了以前很多有好的讲员，像罗布森，他是美国奥数队的总教练，还有那些搞生物的朱教授啊，还有耶鲁大学搞面试的，还有那些家长小孩子搞国际象棋冠军的，那些做得很成功的孩子，跟大家分享各种各样的经验。那么今天晚上呢，我们非常高兴 ，Martha 呢，她跟我们分享大家很关心的一个 homeschooling 这个问题。接下来我们就把时间交给我们的主讲人 Martha， 好不好？谢谢大家。Martha, it's yours.
Okay. I need to be able to share my screen, so I think
Yeah,
you have to
how do I get out? Let me, okay, stop share. Okay.
Great. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this presentation of homeschooling in a COVID-19 world. I apologize that I cannot give this talk in Chinese. I wish I could, but I will try to speak slowly for those of you who that might be helpful for. So first of all, I want to thank Leica, Long Island Chinese American Association, for hosting this webinar. I'm really excited tonight to share information with you. I have so much information packed into this presentation, so I hope you find something that you can take home and benefit from. I also want to thank my friend Lydia Wen Rodgers. She's on the call. She's a fellow homeschool mom, and she's going to be monitoring the Q&A box. So if you want to submit a question while the presentation is going on, Lydia is going to be monitoring that. Feel free to send in your questions. She's going to keep an eye on that. She is entering, I believe, her 5th year of homeschooling now. She has a son who is going to be in 7th grade this year. So she's an experienced homeschooler. Don't be afraid to ask her anything. So I want to begin by just saying I really feel for you. I empathize with you. I understand that this is such a hard time, and I know that that's why you are on the call tonight. We had a tremendous response, and that is because of this situation where this fall we're faced with some very difficult decisions regarding our children's education. You know, in that system that you've trusted, the school system that you've trusted for so many years, that has been there for you, and it all of a sudden falls apart, we all feel at a loss of what to do. And I completely understand that feeling. It's also impacted me at the college and graduate school level, my children. So COVID-19 is impacting everyone. Let me just give you a little preview of what's on the agenda for tonight. I'm going to talk to you about what homeschooling is. I know some of you have varying experiences with homeschooling, and some more than others. So I'm going to try to give you my perspective, my view on what homeschooling is. There were also some specific questions that came in repeatedly from the Google form, the survey. Thank you very much to those of you who completed it, because it really helped me to formulate my talk for tonight. So what if both parents are working full-time? I know that's a situation that many are in. Can you homeschool? What if English is not my first language? Is homeschooling not an option for me? What should I do if we are going to keep our children enrolled in school and we're going to be subject to the hybrid school reopening model? How can I support my child's learning? There's a lot of questions that came in from the Google form. Then I'm also going to address different age levels and grades. So I'm going to have some general advice for elementary, for middle school, and high school as it pertains to homeschooling. Then I also have some resources for gifted children. I know many of you will probably be interested in those resources. I'm also going to discuss curriculum. What do you think about when you're looking at curriculum? What kinds of factors do you need to consider? And I will also have a list of resources that I have personally used throughout my homeschool journey. Perhaps you will find some of them useful. And I'm also going to touch on how to connect with other homeschoolers. Finally, at the end of the talk, I will be talking a little bit about the New York State regulations regarding homeschooling. So homeschooling is regulated from state to state, so by each state. So in New York State, we have specific regulations to oversee homeschooling. So we're going to touch on all of those things. And before I really dive in, I just want to express that I am only one homeschool mom among many, many. So this is my personal advice. I encourage you to connect with other homeschoolers. There are a lot of homeschoolers on Long Island, in Queens, in Manhattan. Connect with them. You'll get different perspectives and different ideas that will help you on your homeschool journey. So I'm only one perspective. So please keep that in mind. All right, I just want to give you a little bit of information about myself. Here's a picture of me and my husband. He's very tall. I'm very short. I have probably I don't know, more than 25 years of teaching experience. I've taught, I've homeschooled my children, of course, for many years. I also taught in the public school in elementary. I taught in a private school in elementary. I taught at Jericho High School, and now I am in an elementary school in the Jericho School District. I have teacher certifications in elementary and also in ESL K through 12. My second job is at the Yi Institute for Asian Arts. I am the director for the English Enrichment Program, and we have all sorts of great classes there. And last but not least, I'm a former homeschool mom of 3 kids. So these are my kids. They're pretty big now. Not all of these. This on the right here is just, this guy on the right is Nicholas. He's my son. But let me start with Andreas. He's the oldest. He just graduated from Stony Brook University, and he's about to begin his master's program in biomedical engineering at Columbia University. And I purposely chose pictures of my kids just normal, doing what they do. This is Andreas. He is building a computer. He built his first computer in 9th grade, and now that he graduated from college, that computer served him for 8 years. His graphics card broke, and so we said, for your graduation, we'll get parts for a new computer. So he's really happy in that picture because he's putting together his new computer. And this is Mariana. She's wrapping dumplings there. So yes, I have taught my kids how to wrap dumplings. And here's Nicholas. His friends are over. They set up a tent in the backyard and they slept outside overnight for 2 nights. They had such a good time. So these are just my kids doing what they do. But the reason I show you these pictures is that in particular, Andreas and Mariana, I homeschooled them all the way through 12th grade, through high school. They survived the college admissions process. They survived homeschooling. They survived the college admissions process. They were offered several full tuition scholarships to various colleges. They were also offered some partial scholarships. So you can homeschool through high school and survive the college admissions process. People have done it. Many people have done it, not just me. And if you set your mind to it, then you can do it too. Nicholas was homeschooled through 7th grade, and we enrolled him in a private school in 8th grade. So homeschooling is not for everyone for the entire path, but he wanted to do more sports, and so that's the main reason why we enrolled him in school. So I told you a little bit about myself. I want to talk a little bit about who is in the audience tonight, a little bit about you. So we have a wide range of groups on the call. Which is why I had a hard time just kind of filtering out information from my presentation. I want to help everyone who has submitted questions. So we have people who have already made the decision to homeschool. So believe it or not, just in the survey, 19 families have indicated that they have already decided to homeschool. That is such a significant number in my mind in the Chinese community. So I'm really happy for those families. We also have people who are keeping their kids enrolled in school. That's the best choice for them, but they want to understand how to support their child in the hybrid reopening model. And then there are people who just haven't made a decision yet what to do this fall. Schools have not all released their recommendations to the state. We don't know what the governor has in mind. We're going to find that out next week probably. So there is so much uncertainty. But also represented on the call are students from pre-K all the way to grade 12. So believe it or not, everyone is interested in homeschooling and wants to know something more about homeschooling. So I just want you to understand that there are these different groups on the call. Just listen to the whole presentation, take from it what you feel benefits you. I think a lot of it is relevant for most of you. So hopefully you'll take away something that you find very helpful. What is homeschooling? Well, I can tell you it is most definitely not what you did this spring when your children were yanked out of school, when your teacher had to all of a sudden figure out how to teach them remotely. That was an experiment. That was what we might call pandemic schooling. That was not true homeschooling. So when people ask me what homeschooling is like, I always like to tell them that homeschooling is a lifestyle choice. It's not just an educational choice, it's a lifestyle choice. And it's a lifestyle choice that gives you freedom in many ways and also control in many ways. You are freed from the school calendar and the expectations of the school and the school district. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. You also have control over your child's learning path and over the values that you want to emphasize. If there are certain values that are important to you, you have more freedom to pass those values on to your children and more freedom to live the lifestyle that you want to live. You do not have to teach exactly what the school is teaching at exactly the same time. So just because they have set a standard for their schools does not mean that that is the magic standard or that is the ultimate standard. So don't think of that. Think of your child as an individual who has individual needs, and you will have the control to meet those individual needs when it is best for your child, when and how. So I can understand that that might sound a little scary at first, but you'll see that as you begin homeschooling, as you talk to other homeschoolers, as you put time and effort into it, it's just like anything else. You learn the ropes. You learn how to do it. And it takes some time, but you can learn, and it's so rewarding. It is so rewarding to homeschool your children. So another benefit, a benefit of homeschooling is that it allows your child to pursue passions that they have. So for example, in school, if you are studying, say, volcanoes or something like that, if the class is done studying volcanoes and then they move on to studying lakes and rivers, maybe your child is still interested in volcanoes. They have no choice but to move on. But when you homeschool, you can stay on a particular topic as long as you want and really dive deep into the topics of interest to your children. And it does so much to encourage a love of learning, a natural curiosity, which is very different from what happens in school. Homeschooling also provides the opportunity to learn from a global perspective. So, you know, in school, kids are often learning from, unfortunately, a white European perspective. If you're teaching your children at home, you can provide not only that perspective, which is a good perspective, but you can also provide the Asian perspective so that overall they are more well-rounded and they have this healthy global view, worldview. Believe it or not, homeschooling can actually be less stressful than sending your child to school. I know you're probably raising your eyebrows and saying, how could that be? But when you homeschool, you find that there is this freedom, there's control over situations that you never had, and there is less, I shouldn't say less, but there's different kind of frustration, and sometimes it is less. And particularly right now with coronavirus, you may feel less stressed if you keep your child home, if that safety and health is a concern for you and you're not comfortable with how the school is handling it. So I also want to mention that it is so important that you know that homeschooling is something that is possible because you love your child. I know that's why you're on this call, because you love your child. There is no teacher, no administrator, no one else that can love your child the way you do. And love goes a long way. It's going to be the motivation for finding exactly the right curriculum for your child, for helping your child pursue his or her interests. And love goes a long way and that is not something that they get to the same extent in school. And I also want to note that homeschooling is not for everyone. So just evaluate as you listen to the presentation whether or not you think homeschooling is for you. If it's not the right choice for you, then that would be terrible for you to decide to homeschool, right? So it's not for everyone. I also want to give you some statistics that I think you'll be interested in. In the spring of 19, in the whole of the United States, there were 2.5 million homeschooled students, right? And in New York State, if you're talking about numbers in New York State, the last figures I could find were from 2018. There were 91,500 students in New York State. So you're not alone. If you're homeschooling, you're with tens of thousands, and perhaps that number has passed 100,000 by now. You might be surprised to hear that there are studies and research that has shown that homeschoolers on the average score 15 to 30 percentile points above public school students on standardized tests. So that is a significant difference for how homeschoolers score on standardized tests. So they do better academically is the bottom line. Those figures are from the National Home Education Research Institute. I'm going to give you that website a little bit later. They have a lot of research. That is what their organization does. And the other thing that I feel is relevant that I want you to know is that it doesn't matter if you are a certified teacher or not. Certified teacher, it has been proven or researched that whether or not you are a certified teacher is unrelated to your child's academic achievement. So homeschoolers do just as well if their parents are certified teachers or if they are not. On the whole, it's not related. So this is something that is totally possible for you. I want to discuss some factors that you can think about when you are deciding to homeschool. So when people, come to me and talk to me about and tell me that they're thinking about homeschooling and they feel overwhelmed, I completely understand. I always try to tell them, look, just think about this 1 year. Can you commit to 1 year? Don't think beyond that. It's too overwhelming. It's too much. Just try to think about 1 year at first. And the other thing that I tell them is that it will be much easier if everyone in your family is on board with the homeschooling idea. Everyone is in agreement that homeschooling is the best choice for your family right now. It will make things a lot easier. For example, when we first started to homeschool, it was something that my husband and I discussed for a long time. And then when we did actually start, it just turned out that I was going to do most of the teaching. I was home at the time. I did not have a job. He was working, so I was going to do most of the teaching. But he didn't make me feel like I was alone. He always had off on Wednesdays, so Wednesdays was his day. He always did the laundry on Wednesdays, and he always went to Costco on Wednesdays. He's a great guy. But because we teamed up, then it worked. It really helps to have a teammate, and the two of you are doing this together. And perhaps you have grandparents living in the home. It's so helpful to have them on board also, because they will support you and they will help you in very practical ways. So I want to discuss some advantages of homeschooling. Now, I think that my list is very long of advantages of homeschooling. And so I just want to go through a few of the things. So one of the things I touched on before is that you have freedom from the school calendar. I think until you are not bound to that school calendar anymore, until you're unchained, you don't realize how liberating that can be, right? Because all of a sudden, you're not tied down to the school calendar. You have all this time during the day, Monday through Friday, right? You can take vacation anytime you want to. We used to always take a fall vacation, September, October, and go upstate or to New England. It's beautiful. We always took a ski vacation the first week in March. We loved it that we could take vacation whenever we wanted to, and we didn't have to be subject to the school schedule and pay extra for, a hotel or a lodging during President's Week or any of those regular school vacations. You can also decide, okay, I want my school year to end in May, at the end of May, and I want 3 full months of summer vacation, June, July, and August. That's wonderful. If you want to do that, you can do that. That's what I always did, and I loved summer vacation. Some people decide they want to homeschool. They want to have school for 3 months and take off 1 month, then school another 3 months and take off another month. You can do any combination. And then, as I said, during the daytime, you have freedom to do lots of things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do when your kids are in school. For example, on Wednesdays, sometimes we went to see an IMAX movie at the Cradle of Aviation Museum. I think now it's not IMAX anymore, it's a different movie theater. But we would go on Wednesdays, and more than once, we watched the movie with no one else in the theater. it was great. We loved it. And it was just, you're just going to find that the freedom from the school schedule is so liberating that you are going to love it. Another advantage is that you can individualize for your student. As I already said, you don't need to teach exactly what the school is teaching. They are not the gold standard. You can decide what your child needs. Whatever your child needs is the gold standard. And you will learn over time to be able to better discern what they need at any given time in their education. You can do what's best for your child, and that is very powerful. In a classroom setting with a group of 20 or 25 students, it is very hard to individualize exactly for each student. It's just not possible, even the best teachers. Another advantage you have at home is that you can provide that 1-to-1 ratio, that one-on-one time. That is so hard to come by in school. I know as a teacher, I said, and that automatically, that one-on-one automatically increases the potential for learning. There's so much that can be done in a one-on-one situation. Homeschooling will save you a lot of time. In school, there's so much wasted time. You know, you're waiting for one child who can't find their pencil. You're waiting for someone else who has to use the bathroom. You're waiting for other people in the group. And a math lesson that would take, 45 minutes in school might only take you 20 minutes at home. It can be very efficient. And you don't have to worry about the commute to school, the commute home from school. You're saving time that way. It's really a time saver. And I also mentioned before that you can follow your child's passions. If they are passionate about music, about a sport, if they're very talented singer or actor, actress, if they're very good at art, if they love to spend time outdoors, you have more freedom to do all of those things. And if health and nutrition are important to you, that homeschool setting is so much easier to pass on those values of health and nutrition. You can feed them a good meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, give them exactly what you think is healthy for them. And they have time to eat. They have time to sit down. They're not as rushed. So it's great for health and nutrition also. Disadvantages of homeschooling. I'm sure that there are some. I have only a few on my list. One thing that I found was that organized sports are harder to participate as a child gets older. And that was one of the main reasons that we put my son in school in 8th grade. He wanted to participate in more sports. And also, of course, a lot of the responsibility is on the parent. So you have a lot of work, you have a lot of research to do, but at the same time, you have to remember that you have control, and that's a benefit. There's this big question of socialization. People always ask that socialization question, how about the kids socializing? Well, it's kind of a joke among homeschoolers that homeschoolers are really hardly ever at home. I think, as you'll find when you start homeschooling, there are so many interesting things to do. There are so many different ways to learn. You go to museums, you go on field trips, you go to see the opera, you go to productions. And granted, right now that is very limited. I don't think that, hopefully it will not be that way forever, but there are options nonetheless of things that you can do. So homeschoolers have a hard time fitting in their book learning and sitting down in front of a computer or in front of a book. And I always like to explain socialization this way. In my mind, when kids socialize in school, it's somewhat of an artificial setting, because the kids are simply put together because they are the same age. To me, in the real world, the way socialization happens is you go to a gathering and a party or something, and your child meets people their age, they meet people who are adults, they meet their friends, younger brothers and sisters, and they learn to interact with all different ages. They learn how to talk to adults. So to me, I think of that as a much more natural socialization situation. So you can, as a homeschooler, seek out opportunities for socialization. There are homeschool co-op groups, which are very popular. And if you join a homeschool co-op group, that co-op will likely meet either once a week or every other week, whatever it may be. And the students and the parents come together, and often the parents volunteer to teach a class in whatever they have expertise in, and the kids have choices of what classes they want to take. And some co-ops are more academic, some co-ops are more social, but there's always that opportunity then to meet friends at a homeschool co-op. You can get involved in orchestra if your child plays an instrument. Church is a way to socialize, family gatherings, playing with neighbors, going to group classes, you know, like I work at the Institute, that would be to me an opportunity to socialize. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, community and youth organizations, sports, drama, acting. There are a million ways that you can find opportunities for your child to socialize. And field trips are really popular in the homeschool community. The last year that I was homeschooling, we had this fantastic mom. She had a spreadsheet. She had field trips planned for the whole entire year. It was incredible. And we signed up for different field trips. We went to the New York City Ballet, or there were field trips to the New York City Ballet, to the Metropolitan Opera, to farms, to museums. There were field trips out east on Long Island. There were field trips in Manhattan, all over. They were wonderful opportunities for socialization. So I think you'll find that the longer you homeschool, the more you will wonder why you even worried about socialization. It will not be an issue after a while. Okay, so I want to address some of the questions that came up in the Google form. What if both parents are working full-time? Can I homeschool? So I will say that it's not going to be easy. I'm not going to lie to you, but with some creativity and thinking outside the box, I would say that you might be able to try it. It really depends on what you want to do. So, so when I say thinking about outside the box, so be flexible about different times when schoolwork can be done. For example, in the morning before work, or maybe if you work an early shift from say 7 o'clock to 3 in the afternoon, you can have school in the afternoon after you come home. You can do more work on the weekends. You can divide up the responsibilities between mom and dad. Mom can teach a couple of subjects, dad can teach a couple of subjects. You can enlist the help of relatives if you have relatives in the home who can help. Also, if you have someone who can drive them to, say, for example, I know many kids take music lessons, try to schedule those music lessons during the day when you are at work and someone else can drive them to those lessons so that when you come home from work, you can do some schoolwork. I know I always scheduled our music lessons during the time when other people would be at school. It was just much easier to schedule them that way. You can also hire a high school student maybe to help your child finish their work that you leave for them. And you can even start teaching your children to help with house chores, because I know that's part of what needs to get done. So they can start learning at a very young age to help out with the house chores. Another question that came up is, what if English is not my first language? I'm an ESL teacher. I understand, I empathize with that situation. So my advice to you would be to first realize that there is a lot that you can do. Just because you're not totally comfortable with English doesn't mean that you can't do anything. There's so much that you can do. Think of yourself as your child's manager, right? So your job is to establish routine and structure in the home. And then for the academics, you're going to outsource those academics. You're going to find a tutor. You're going to find classes for them. You're going to do the legwork or the research to find those fantastic teachers or those fantastic classes for your kids. And I know many of you are really good at doing that kind of thing. You can also teach Chinese, of course, right? That's the most obvious. But you're going to find opportunities for them to socialize and get them to the place where they can socialize with their friends and also learn something at the same time. So if you think of yourself as the manager and you are the coordinator, you coordinate everything, you can get a lot done. And also remember that no one can replace you. No one replaces one-on-one attention and love from mom and dad. So doesn't matter if you speak English or not, they still need mom and dad's love. Right? So I tried to boil it down to 3 simple steps. What do I need if I want to actually start homeschooling? What steps do I take? Well, I would suggest that you definitely connect with a homeschool group. You need some support. You need to get other people's perspective. Then you're going to need to notify your school district in New York State. You have to send a letter of intent to the superintendent's office, and I'll go into that at the end of the talk. And then you need to decide on a curriculum. So I just want to tell you about a few different approaches to homeschooling. And these are very general, but I think that you should know these. So a traditional approach would be kind of what most of us are most familiar with. So that might be, you know, that you have an ELA, that you study English language arts, math, history, science, maybe foreign language, and some electives. That's kind of very traditional. The classical education, this book called The Well-Trained Mind by Susan Weisbauer is one of my favorite books on classical education. She has a wealth of information in there. But classical education has a big focus on history and on classic literature. The other subjects are also studied and integrated in there. But the ultimate goal is for students to be able to articulate their opinions, for them to be able to express themselves, and to do that logically and persuasively. So that's the ultimate goal of classical education. Then there is this thing called unschooling, which is kind of a funny word, right? But unschooling is really, it's really unstructured. It's a kind of approach where you let your child take the lead. You're supporting them and guiding them, but the direction of their learning is determined by their personal interests. And I have friends who have followed this approach. Their children have grown up to be wonderful human beings. They have such a curiosity for learning, and they're always wanting to exploring something new. So there are people who are unschoolers, and they're very, very successful. So there will always be this question of structure versus freedom. How much structure do you want to have, and how much freedom do you want to have? If you're more of a relaxed kind of person, you may want to be a little more laid back. If you need to have routine and structure, that might be your approach, but those are things that everyone needs to think about. So this was another question that came up in the Google form. You know, for those of you who are sending or who have decided that you're going to send your children back to school, you need some strategies. It was tough this spring, right? It was really tough to manage that. All of a sudden you're working from home, and your child is also trying to figure out, you know, how to get on Google Classroom or whatever they may have needed to do. So my suggestion would be, first of all, just do what makes the most sense, right? Which is support the classroom teacher, maximize the learning opportunities that are provided by that teacher. If they give work, do the assigned work. If they have meetings, get to the meetings on time. So support the classroom teacher, and that will help your child to maximize their learning and get the most benefit. Then I would suggest, this is my own personal take on things, that I think it would be a good idea to set up a routine where you're getting up the same time every day, even if you're home for the day. I would say this is more for younger children. For teens, I'm not sure that this would work as well. But you know, if they're in this regular sleep cycle where they're going to bed every night the same night, getting up the same time every morning, then they're not as groggy on days when they have to get up and go to school and function, right? And they also are up early when they're home so they can get their work done and then have fun, right? So there are benefits to having this regular sleep routine. I would also suggest that you as the parent be involved in what the child is doing. Know what is expected from the teacher, stay on top of it, and establish your authority in your own home. I know your kids will try to say, well, the teacher said I didn't have to do that, or the teacher said do it this way. But you have authority in your own home. When they're home with you, you can say, this is how we do it at home. And yes, we will do the assignments from the teacher, but this is what we're going to do at home. This is my home. You can be creative when it comes to scheduling your schoolwork. I know that some teachers in the spring, and this would not be everyone, but some teachers told the kids on Monday what they need to do for the entire week and just let them do it at their own pace and said it's due on Friday. If your teacher's like that, you can try to get everything done on Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday can be for outings, either some physical activity or getting together with friends, taking a field trip. Maybe you want to do some cooking together, teach your child something. You can be, you can have entire free days in this hybrid model if that works, if that's the way that your teacher will work. I also suggest that you dedicate time to pursue their personal interests. That's something that they don't have time to do in school. Make sure that you don't overschedule. Give them some downtime. They need it. They're in school all day and they will need some downtime. I think sometimes we tend to want to make up for what they're not doing, but sometimes they just need some rest and relaxation. And family time is still important. And I think it's natural for you. You will keep your child appropriately challenged. If something is too easy, find a little something else for them to do. If it's too hard, sit down and help them with it, right? Okay, my next few slides, I have some general advice for some different age groups. So this slide is particularly pertaining to pre-K and kindergarten. I would say the most important thing at this age is to really just help them enjoy language and numbers, right? If they don't like language and if they don't like numbers, they're not going to want to learn to read and they're not going to want to learn math, right? So what you're doing at this stage is trying to show them how fun and how enjoyable it is. So just relax a little. At pre-K and kindergarten, you probably really only need to do maybe about an hour of schoolwork, some reading and some math. And then the rest of it can be learning through playing. So those educational toys, those puzzles that you find at Lakeshore Learning, they can play with all of those things and be learning without even realizing it. This is also a great stage to incorporate opportunities for learning in your daily activities, right? You're driving around town, you see a stop sign. Well, what are the letters on that stop sign? What does that stop sign say? What's the first letter? What's the sound of that S? What's the last letter in that word? What's the sound for P? What's the price of the gas at that gas station? You're driving through town. How many M's can you find, right? If you're shopping in Costco, you need rice. Which sign do you think says rice, right? All of those types of things you can teach while you're just going about your daily activities. And I would say also poetry and rhyming are really important at this age for establishing patterns of language and for enjoyment of language. Read aloud as much as possible. If you don't feel comfortable reading yourself in English, find audiobooks and websites that will do it for you. And take advantage of the library. Go to the library every week, check out 20, 25 books, and read them all, and then go back to the library, return them. So make that part of your routine. There's so much benefit that you can get just from going to the library. As far as elementary age children, many people ask, how much time should we spend homeschooling? I would suggest that in first grade, maybe you're just spending 1 to 2 hours, and by the time you get up to 5th grade, you might be spending as much as 3 or 4 hours. Again, that's my personal approach. But elementary is especially important for building strong reading skills. The reason that is important is because reading opens the doors for future learning. If you become a fluent reader in elementary, it will be much easier for you to learn history. It will be much easier for you to learn science and even math. There's a lot of reading involved in learning the other subjects. So that strong foundation in reading is really important. And then you're also going to be building vocabulary, writing skills. And don't forget about the arts and classical music. They need a lot of physical activity at this age. And you also want to give opportunities for cooperation and teamwork. That might happen in those socialization settings that we talked about earlier. This is also an age when kids tend to start having specific interests. So help them to explore those interests. If they're interested in medieval history or knights, or if they're interested in cars, then encourage that and help them to find more information on those things. You're fostering that natural curiosity. So there's one other important thing I want to say about this age. I know that many of you have concerns about grades. Honestly, the entire elementary, I never gave my kids one grade. The only type of grade I gave them was needs improvement, satisfactory, or excellent, because I had to put something on a report. It's not about grades at this stage. I know that's not everyone will be comfortable with that, but to me, learning was the focus, not grades. And I knew that they were learning. I could tell every day they tell me some new information that they learned. So, okay, they're learning. I don't need to give them a letter grade. That changes later. But at this stage, I think in elementary, it's about learning and enjoying learning. So the one other organizational tip I have for you, and this was really important for me personally, it's just one of my personal ways to organize. On Sundays, I would always sit down and plan out the entire week. So let me show you an example. So this is a plan that I had for my 5th grader. You can see this was quite a while ago, 2008. This was my weekly plan. That particular week, we had a field trip to the Queen's Science Center on Thursday, and the other days of the week, you can see he learned a little bit of Chinese, he did some math, some history. This is grammar, science, and he was reading Fellowship of the Ring for literature. So this was my week. I planned it out every Sunday, so I knew exactly what we were going to do, and it really helped us to stay on track and to keep with the pace that I needed to keep. And you'll notice that I don't have Saturday and Sunday on there. We took off the weekends. We were off on the weekends. We took off holidays. Every school holiday we took off. And the other thing that was really fun was we always had no school on birthdays. So if it was your birthday, we had no school that day. So a lot of times we would end up just like, you could choose where you wanted to go for your birthday. A lot of times we ended up at a museum in the city, or sometimes we took a hike, whatever it was. It was a fun day, and the kids really looked forward to that. My husband took off from work. It was a big deal when they were little, but it was great. We homeschooled, so you didn't have to have school on your birthday, and that was a lot of fun. For middle school, I think many of you know and understand that this is a time when there are a lot of hormonal changes, and that we really need to be sensitive to kids' emotional and mental health, encourage self-expression so that they have an outlet. And just an overall approach is that I know it's hard to figure out how much independence to give them. I would say give them independence, but to me, I think it's still important to be nosy and stay involved, because then you can see when something is not quite right. This is also a time when they may be ready to begin some high school classes. You might start having outside teachers more. If you've done more of the teaching up to now, you might now move towards more online classes, tutors, and the kids are going to start getting more formal grades. They'll get used to that. Okay. Then for high school, there's so much that can be said about high school. Just in general, especially if you are thinking about, I know there are some on the call who are actually thinking about starting homeschooling in high school. I would say that it's really key to include your teens in their educational decisions. So they have to be on board. If they're not on board, it's really not going to work, right? But even if you've already been homeschooling for, elementary school, middle school, they need to be included more in the decisions. So another suggestion I have is to make a tentative plan for all 4 years of high school. This doesn't matter if you're homeschooling or not, you could probably do this anyways. So just on a chart, along one side, you can have 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. Along the top, have the different subject areas that need to be covered: English, history, math, science, foreign language, electives. And just kind of sketch out your plan for high school. It will make you feel better. It may change along the way, but at least you have a direction that you're going. You have some thought of where you're going. By the time they get to 11th and 12th grade, this might be a time when you consider enrolling them in classes at a local college. A lot of homeschool students will take college classes in 11th and 12th grade. They need a lot of opportunities for time to get together with friends. That socialization is so important. Their friends are so important to them at this stage. And it's also a great time to give them opportunities to pursue their interests. I have a friend whose son really enjoyed playing the organ. And he spent a lot of time playing the organist and became this fantastic organist. And that particular son, he's a homeschooler, he just got into Duke University. He's about to start college at Duke. So it works, homeschooling works. If they love chess, give them time to do chess. If they, want to do research, all those things, this is a time when you can try to be more flexible and give them more say in what they want to do. I also would suggest that you start Kiwi and transcript in 9th grade that lists all of the classes and grades. Keep a list of their activities and honors and awards. You will end up being their high school counselor. So that's a whole nother story, but just start with a list. That's all you have to start with. And in the end, you can, in New York State, you can award your own diploma when they graduate from high school, and you will obtain a letter of equivalency from the school district. So let me just touch on that quickly. A letter of equivalency is a letter that you request from your school district, and you have been diligent about turning in all your documents that are required every year. So they will be able to give you this letter of equivalency that will say, so-and-so has completed all of the requirements for high school as stated in the New York State regulations. And that letter will be important for college admissions. That's what you will submit to people or to colleges instead of a diploma or any kind of other certification that they have finished high school. So that letter is a key letter that you will have to get. All right. I don't have time for a full discussion of college admissions here, but I just wanted to give you those few tips. And I also wanted to show you a sample weekly plan. This, again, I did every Sunday, and now this is a plan of one that I did for my 10th grader. So you'll see that she was taking 3 AP classes. This is AP US History, AP Physics, and AP English Language. She was taking math, she was taking French. She had violin lessons, and she was also studying for the SAT. So she had live class for French on Monday and Wednesday. This particular week, we had a field trip to the Museum of the Moving Image. You can see that on Friday, we met with our homeschool co-op group for the entire morning, and Friday night we went to church and they had youth meeting. On Monday nights, she always had orchestra with the Gemini Youth Orchestra. And so she could see exactly what was expected of her every day and how her week was going to turn out. There was a little bit of work in high school. We did do a little bit of work on the weekends because, that's high school and you have more work. And then I would always try to give them some clue of what was coming the next week so that they're planning ahead. And I guess this particular week she had Shakespeare play practice the next week. And so that's what we were looking ahead to. I thought it would be beneficial to many of you to discuss some resources for gifted children, and because I know a lot of you are interested. So I really highly recommend that you go to this Hoagie's Gifted Education page. It can be a little overwhelming because there is so much on that website, but start on you'll see some tabs along the top when you go to that website, and one of them will say Gifted 101. So start with that and you'll get your bearings and you'll understand how to navigate the website. But there is extensive resources for parents, for students, for educators. There are articles to read. There are conferences linked that you can attend. I guess probably most of them are virtual now. There's social emotional advice. There's advice on how to get your child identified as gifted. There are so many organizations that are supportive of gifted students on there. There's gifted curriculum that's good for gifted kids. So you'll find a lot of information on that page. Some other organizations that you may have heard of before are this Northwestern Center for Talent Development, Johns Hopkins Center for Talent Youth, and Duke Talent Identification Program. These three are all very similar programs where they run a talent search and your child can be identified as a gifted learner. And many of them also offer classes. Then there's the Davidson Institute for Talent Development, which I think is not as well known. This will identify if your child is what would be called profoundly gifted or PG. And then if they are, then you qualify as what is called a David Young Scholar, and everything is free. All of their resources are free. They will provide you with someone who can advise you, and there are opportunities to connect with other kids who might be similar to them and interested in the same types of things. And there are a few, I think, workshops that you can participate in. Then there are a couple other these websites, Online G3, Elements of Mathematics Foundations. I'll talk a little bit more about them later. There's the Stanford Online High School, which is for gifted students. It's also extremely expensive, but it is there, and it is something that some of you may want to look into. All right, now we're finally getting to curriculum. Thank you for your patience, by the way. I just have so much I want to share with you. So thank you for your patience and continuing to listen in. But what do you think, what do you need to think about when you're choosing a curriculum, when you're choosing some materials for your child? Well, I would suggest that first you think about what their needs are. Do they need a lot of repetition in order to learn? Do they get bored easily? Do they need to be introduced to new topics very frequently and then come back and touch on old topics? Or do they learn better with sticking with one topic until they practice that and learn it really well and then go on to the next topic? You know, curricula are different that way, and you'll be able to learn to identify those things. Do they learn better from print books, or are they going to be a better learner on the computer? You want to think about if they need more accountability from an outside teacher. Do they need someone else telling them, okay, this is the deadline, this has to be done? Are they more of a hands-on kind of learner? Do they need more movement? I mean, one of the great things about homeschool is that if, say, you have, for example, I'll just say a boy that needs a lot of movement when they learn, you can provide that at home. At school, no, they have to sit at their desk and they can't move around the room. There isn't much space, and particularly now with social distancing, they're going to have to be in that same room all day. Well, in my school district, there's going to be very little movement. They're going to be in the same classroom for the entire day. The specials teachers are going to come to them. So, and they're not even going to go to lunch. Their lunch will be brought to them. So it's, you know, I don't know what your school district is doing. But then you also want to think about the type of learner. This is connected, associated with that. Are they a visual learner? Do they learn better by seeing things? Do they learn better when they, and retain things better when they hear things? Are they an auditory learner? Are they kinesthetic? Do they have to have manipulatives to move around to help them learn? So all of those things you want to consider. Now these two words, asynchronous versus synchronous. Synchronous just means that that is a live class that you attend at the same time every week. For example, the French class that was on Mondays and Wednesdays at 1:30. That's a synchronous class. You have to be there, sitting there at that time. Asynchronous classes are online classes where you can just log in anytime and do the work whenever it's convenient for you. So you'll want to choose whatever works best for you. How much screen time do you want your child to have? That's a personal decision. If you want less screen time, then choose a curriculum that is in print. Don't choose something online. These are different places where you can find curriculum. This is a site that reviews homeschool curriculum that will have a lot of helpful information for you. And then you're also going to consider cost. Some curricula are quite costly. So just keep in mind that sometimes if they're popular, you may be able to find a used version of that curriculum on eBay or something like that. So there are some options there. And also just remember that there's no perfect curriculum, right? And you'll have to work with it. What works for somebody, one person may not work for the other person. What type of curriculum should I use? So there are these different types of curriculums. I want to talk curricula. I want to talk a little bit about online schools. By online schools, I don't mean just taking one class online. I mean a school that offers the complete package, just like you would have if you go to a brick and mortar school, except this is an online school. So an online school will offer you everything you need for that grade level. It will often be accredited by an agency, and many times they will award a diploma, a high school diploma for graduation. Now, there are some really nice things about online schools. You get the whole package, right? You don't have to go looking for things. But some of the downsides are it's an all or nothing deal. You take the whole thing or nothing at all. So, you know, for example, if English is not working well for your child, you probably don't have a lot of choices. You probably can't get out of that English class. You just have to deal with it and stick it out. So that is a good option for some schools, but just remember, it's not, it's has less flexibility, let me put it that way. And also usually online schools involve a lot of synchronous classes where you have to log on and be there at a particular time. Sometimes it is a lot of screen time. Another option you can choose would be to choose a complete grade level curriculum in print, right? So, and then, for example, an entire 6th grade curriculum, which gives me math, science, history, ELA, in a print form. So there's a little bit more flexibility with that. So say if the math program from that particular provider is not working, then you can go look for a different math program that might work better for you, right? So there's a little more flexibility than an online school. You can also choose to curate or to put together your own curriculum by choosing subjects from different providers, math from one publisher, you know, science from another publisher, another provider, and you just pick and choose whatever you think is best for your type of learner. There's something else, this classical conversations has become very popular. I would say in the past, I would say 5 or 8 years, where these are groups that meet together. They all use the classical conversations curriculum, and they meet once a week, and during their meeting, they have teachers who are usually some parents that review what was studied during the week. So you do the curriculum at home, but you review it with everyone at Classical Conversations when you meet together, and you might preview what comes ahead, what's coming ahead for the next group. Another option, which is much newer, is that some families are forming these learning pods or micro schools where you might have 5 or 8 or 10 students in a learning pod, and you hire a teacher to teach your students. That is becoming more popular, and people are especially looking into that right now with coronavirus. I don't have a lot to say about how I think that works, but I'm sure that there are some benefits and also some disadvantages. All right, I just have a few more slides to go. There are literally thousands and thousands of different programs out there. It's really hard to narrow it down, so I thought I would just share with you some of the curriculum providers that I personally use, that I had experience with. K12.com I used in the elementary years, particularly for ELA, English Language Arts. And I think it's a very robust curriculum. And you'll find that if you use K12.com, you don't have to worry about gaps in your child's education. You can pretty much trust that curriculum. All the basics will be covered, and you'll get through what they need to know. And it'll be a good foundation for them. Sunlight. It's an entirely a print curriculum, and I love Sunlight for a few reasons. One is it integrates the study of literature and history, which I think should be integrated anyways. It's a natural thing, and also Sunlight requires a student to read so many books. They read much more than any other curriculum that I have come across right now that I know of. And that in and of itself, the volume of reading is fantastic. It was really great for my kids. It really helped them to become strong readers. Then there's the Critical Thinking Company, which has workbooks that develop critical thinking skills. The Potter's School, you can pick and choose classes that you want. I thought they were particularly good for foreign language because you have a live class where you're practicing speaking that language, which it's really hard as a homeschooler. I guess that is one of the challenges, is finding a good foreign language class where you can really practice all 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing, particularly speaking. Then there is, we used Online 3G, and this was a really fantastic website. I love their classes because they had classes by topic. It was not like, okay, this is 7th grade English, or this is 9th grade history. They had classes offered by topics. For example, they have one class that is dystopian literature. They had a class just about World War II. They have a class on Harry Potter. British literature. So they were really interesting classes, and they were mostly history and literature. Then there's Singapore math, some of you are probably familiar with. They have a focus on a problem-solving approach. Think Well Math is another one of those curricula. If you use it, you probably are not going to have any gaps. It's a basic, strong curriculum. We used it from 6th grade up, so we had algebra, algebra 1, algebra 2, trigonometry, geometry. All of those we took with Think Well, and it's self-paced. You just buy the lessons and you do them at your own pace, however you want to do them. This Elements of Mathematics Foundations is a little known website. I don't think it's that well known, but it's great for developing those higher level thinking skills. It's a proof-based curriculum, so it has a different approach to math, and kids are really learning to think critically there and prove why something is true in math. Deborah Bell is another provider that I used particularly for English classes, and now I think recently they've really expanded their all-class offerings. We used Northwestern CTD and CTY, and I'll be honest with you, I was never thrilled with them. We took several classes, and even though, you know, it's supposed to be for gifted kids or whatever, I always felt the teacher support was very poor. We didn't get a lot of feedback when we wanted feedback, and there was supposed to be teacher support, and they were kind of expensive classes, so I wasn't really thrilled with them. Then when my kids got into high school, both of my two oldest took several classes at SUNY Old Westbury, and it was very easy to, at the time, and I don't know if it's still the case, but you can apply as a non-matriculated student, so you're not going to get a degree, and you want to use that designation that they have called lifelong learner. And then it just kind of opened up all these doors for the kids to take classes in whatever. So they took some things that were harder to do at home, like physics with physics lab and things like that. And you know, when they went into college, all of those credits transferred. It's just so happened that my son went to another SUNY school, so all of his credits from SUNY Old Westbury transferred over to SUNY Stony Brook, and that was great. You know, he had more credits to start with. A great provider for AP classes is called Pennsylvania Homeschoolers. You don't have to live in Pennsylvania. But what is really great about these classes is that these teachers design their own AP courses, so they're very invested in it. And you find such a difference when there is a teacher who has designed their own course as opposed to a teacher that has been hired to teach a curriculum that's already written. There's a big difference. The King's College, NYC, if you look up something called dual enrollment, that means that the classes that you're taking will give you high school credit and college credit. At the King's College, they have a lot of online classes that they offer. And then for our music and arts, we just did orchestra, we did some private music lessons, and for physical education, you know, we counted our skiing and hiking trips and different things that we did. All right, I just have a couple more to go. These are some ways that you can connect with other homeschoolers. So several on the list, I think you can just look up yourself. This Naihan, Leah, I met Lydia through Leah. Then there's Dream for Kids, there's something called Flight. These two are Facebook groups. But the one I really want to draw attention to is this Homeschool Legal Defense Association, HSLDA. They require that you pay a membership every year. It's about, I don't know, $115, $120 per year. But I did that every year because I felt it was really worth it. If you ever have any issues with your school district, HSLDA has lawyers on staff who will help you, advise you as to what is the best way to follow the regulations. And if the school district is giving you trouble, they can at times act on your behalf and contact the school district. So they are a fantastic organization. And if you look on their website, they also have so many great resources for homeschooling, how to get started. They'll tell you the regulations for every single state. They have sample documents that you need to turn in for New York State, your IHIP, your letter of intent, and they have samples of all of that on their website. So it is a really good resource. Classical Conversations, I mentioned that before, but that is a way if you get involved with the Classical Conversations group, you go on their website and you do a search, search for a community, and you'll find all the communities that are close to you, located close to you. And this one I want to encourage you to do. We have so many new homeschool families, even within our own community. You could form your own homeschool group or your own homeschool co-op and get together with those people and do activities together with people that you already know that have decided to homeschool. So I encourage you to go ahead and do that. And don't forget to take care of yourself. Make time for yourself. It's tough when you homeschool because the kids are always around, but make time and take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to help your children. And get everyone in the family involved so you're not doing it all by yourself. Finally, I just want to touch on the real basics of the New York State regulations. So this is what you would look up or Google if you want to know what the regulations are in New York State. New York State Regulations 100.10 home instruction, right, or some form of that. So first I want you to know that kindergarten is not mandatory. You do not have to send your child to kindergarten. So if your child is entering kindergarten, you don't actually have to send them this year. And you also do not have to report anything to the state, because kindergarten in New York State is not mandatory. But beyond that, first grade and up, the procedures are that you need to submit what is called a letter of intent. It's really just a 2-sentence letter saying, I intend to homeschool my child so-and-so for the 2020-2021 school year. Signed, your name. It's very simple. That's your letter of intent. You send that to the superintendent's office. So that must be submitted, the regulations state that must be submitted either by July 1st, or if you decide to homeschool during the school year, you send that letter within 14 days of pulling your child out, or 14 days after you start homeschooling. They must receive that letter of intent. Otherwise, your child may be marked truant. So you want to be really careful if you're pulling them out during the school year. I think you may also need to officially withdraw them from school. I would probably check the HSLDA website as far as in New York State what to do if you're pulling them out in the middle of the school year and you decide to homeschool. But it is certainly able to be done. You can do it. Then you will need to submit at the beginning of the year what is called an IHIP, Individualized Home Instruction Plan. Again, pretty simple. You just list the subject areas that are listed as required in the New York State regulations at each grade level. They tell you what is required. So you list those required subjects and what curriculum you are using for each subject. And then you have quarterly reports for each year. And in each quarterly report, you describe the subject matter that has been covered in that quarter. And then every year you have to do an annual assessment and submit the results of that annual assessment. Especially for 4th grade and up to 3rd grade, you can just submit what's called a written narrative, where it's just, a page or something describing how they have done over the school year. But starting in 4th grade, you need to give an annual assessment such as the Stanford Achievement Test, the California Achievement Test, the Iowa Test. Those are all acceptable tests. All right, so finally, I just want to leave you with a list of helpful organizations and resources. This is the one that I said, NARI is the one that has research that you can look up. This is the New York State Education website. Homeschool Buyers Co-op has group discounts on curriculum. Christianbook.com has Christian curriculum, but also non-Christian, and you can go on their website and find a lot of homeschool material there. All right. So I've really packed it in tonight. Thank you for listening. I could not answer every single question that came in through the Google Forms, but we are going to have a little bit of time for Q&A. If anyone has some questions, Lydia has been monitoring the chat. We also have some questions that people submitted ahead of time. Again, Lydia is entering her 5th year of homeschooling. She's an experienced homeschooler. She's going to come on the Q&A portion of the call with me, and she's going to help to answer questions, any questions that come in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martha. So Lydia, you want to take it over for the Q&A, or?
We don't have a ton of questions. Somebody did ask if the presentation will be available. The slides won't be available, but Martha's compiled a list of resources, and she will be making that available a few days from now.
Yeah.
Either through email or through WeChat.
Right, right. There's a list of about 30 or 35 resources that were mentioned throughout the talk today, and I'll be passing those on to you. So you have plenty of information there.
Okay. We have a question that says, if it didn't work out and we need to send the kids back to school, how do we do it? Well, that letter of intent has to be sent out annually. So if you want to re-enroll your student, you would just call up your school district and let them know that you no longer want to homeschool, and to make sure that they now process your child back into the school system so that they can put them in classes. The only question I would have is about regions, and I think this came up in an earlier chat that I wasn't able to answer. Do regions start in New York in 8th grade, Martha?
I think it's about 8th grade. You can take them, depends when you take the class. For example, earth science, sometimes you might take in middle school. Then you would take the regions for earth science the year that you take that course.
Okay. So
let me jump in regarding the regions. Regions usually it's for high school courses. Some students taking high school such as math, earth science, they do that in middle school. So they take regions in middle school, but that belongs to high school course. So it's not necessarily like my son, he's 7th grade, he's taking Algebra 1 already. That's the regions course, but even though when he was in middle school. So that's to clarify that.
So Mr. Chan, if they wanted to go back to high school, are they able to take regions?
I think so. There's a thing called walk-in, because let's say your private schools, they don't offer regions. They can't just go to a public school, they sign in. They need to do ahead of time because the high school has to order the test for them. They usually do their co-guidance office. They say, oh, my son, or the students can call themselves to call the guidance office. Said, I will take Algebra 1. Let's say take the regions. Usually they offer 3 times a year. At the end of June, end of August, that's for summer school students. Also end of January for the people, they want to take in January. So every course almost have 3 times a year in high school they can take.
Okay. And I think in my research, maybe Martha can jump in too, that, obviously the PSAT, the SAT, and the ACT, you're able to take those as a homeschooler. And even for AP classes, you would just have to look up a school district that is offering that AP test, and then you can enroll and take it there.
Yeah, regarding AP, I think it works the same way as regions. You just have to call the school, because if they recognize you as a homeschooler student, and they should make that possible for the students. They've called the school, they will order the test for them. For PSAT, I think a child can take 2 times. Usually by 10th grader, they can take it. That's considered as a practice. By the time 11th grader, they take a PSAT, that's official. So if you don't take 10th grade PSAT, it's optional. You don't have to take it. But it's encouraged for them to take it because it's for them to practice, to get used to it. Simply, it's a predictive test for ACT. If you do well on PSAT, usually shows you will do well on ACT also. Also, PSAT offers a National Merit Scholarship. Right. And it doesn't give you much money, but that scholarship, if you receive it, college will see you are very strong, because not very many too many students get that scholarship. So they will offer you even more money. That little National Merit Scholarship is like a little token to get the big ones.
Mm-hmm. And also, I just want to say that there's a lot of opportunities out there. If your child is interested, like my daughter actually went to Long Island Lutheran, and they did not have a Math Olympiad team, and she was interested. So we filled out the paperwork, and we asked if Great Neck would allow her to take the test, and she went there. So those options are also available for homeschoolers. If your child is inclined and you find them those opportunities, you don't necessarily have to belong to a school that has administers those tests. You could look around, and they're very accommodating. They will find you a school that will work with you.
Yeah, yeah.
There any other questions? I read the list. I printed it. I'm an old-fashioned person. I like a hard copy. I printed 8 pages, and I read through those questions. I pretty much, Martha answered all of those questions. Their major concern is socialization. How do I motivate my children if I work? Or how do I do if I want to do homeschool? It's all being answered. So I think if you have any questions, 假如大家还有问题的话呢，可以打字。
While people are still sending in more questions, we welcome questions, by the way. Please send them in. We're happy to try to answer. There was one more in the chat that says, what do you think of the students' interaction aspect that the kids will be missing during homeschooling versus regular school with a big group of kids? My kids refuse to learn from parents as it is very boring. They prefer more interaction in the classroom with more kids as it is more fun. How do you encourage or motivate or inspire kids to learn at home? Well, that's a good question. We do want our kids to be motivated. So I'll start by saying that, first off, when they are interested in their learning, if they are leading the way, they will be much more invested. They will find it interesting and they will want to learn. But I understand that sometimes that group interaction is definitely more dynamic than sitting at home by yourself. So in those cases, that's where you want to get them involved in some group activities. You may need to start something yourself. For example, when my kids were younger, I started a math counts club where, once a month, I think it was once a month, we met together at the library. We did this math counts activity. And that was a way for them to do an activity as a group and also have something educational. Also, at one point in time, I decided to teach a class on Latin roots. So we had people over our house for the Latin roots class. And other parents will do something similar. If you have a really great support group, your parents will pull together and provide some more of those group activities. And as you mix some of those in with some of the individual learning, that should help. And I will also say that I always had some kind of motivational program going. So my kids, they either had to earn points or earn stickers. And I even did it, through high school. And as long as the prize was something that they really wanted, then, points work.
Right.
So that's one way to motivate kids.
If I may, I want to share your story. Years ago, I met a person. He said if his daughter write a book report, he give her $50, but not the cash in bank account. And he said this to her: if you read in style, someday you will be driving in style. That money she put in the bank will be in the college, go to college, buy her a car. So that was early 90s, late 80s. But now you can make up to $100 a book, right? So you're gonna buy them a car anyway. So why don't you make your deal more attractive?
That's fun. That's great. Yeah, I mean, just to jump on what Martha said, I have a robotics club that meets at my house on every Friday during the season. So kids do come in. So you are tasked to be more creative, to look for things that your kids are interested in, and you may have to build that community. But I also have great parents who are from the robotics club, and they participate as well. So you be creative. It does challenge us as parents. I mean, Mr. Chen would know, as an educator, you're constantly looking for new ways, to improve your craft. And as parents of homeschoolers, you would as well. You have to be creative. We do have a question from, I think, Joanne Fang, and she wanted to know, how do you manage multiple children? Now, I only have one child that I'm homeschooling. I do have an older daughter who's 6 years older, so I'm managing her schedule and him. But maybe Martha, you can talk about, since you educated 3 at once.
Yeah, it's challenging. You have to be creative. It really depends on their ages. The younger they are, obviously, the more one-on-one attention they need. As they get older, they become more independent learners. They know what the plan is for the week. They're able to work independently, and you just have to oversee that. But as far as working with young children, it's really a matter of planning things. For example, so if you have a preschooler who still takes a nap, and then you have some child in kindergarten, you'll want to do that 1 hour of work with that kindergarten child while the preschooler is napping, if you can, right? You just find ways to keep the other one busy. Or you can, many people will offer the information will work with the older child, and if the children are close in age, then the younger one will just naturally be curious and want to learn also. I know I have a friend that has 2 children that are 6 and 3, and the 3-year-old just wants to kind of do whatever her older brother is doing. She wants to be there. That's pretty natural. So that can, as long as they're, they're quiet, or as long as they're cooperative, they're going to learn something too. So there's no downside to that. So you can either school them together, or you can try to do one at a time. Once they get a little further in elementary, you can choose to either use the same curriculum with both of them, particularly if it's something like Sunlight, where you're just reading books together and it's the content that you're talking about. Or you can choose something individual for each of them and just try to juggle both of them as best as you can. Yeah.
Homeschool is new to me. I learned a lot from Martha's presentation tonight, but I do look at one thing today from the presentation, that the parents decide to do a homeschooling. The parents, it's the one set the tone of the program. How do you want the program goes? For example, Martha mentioned the math counts. I know that program. It's a very good, solid math program. It's the competition on a regular basis online. If parents knows that there's some of the math programs there also, so it really helps the child. Public schools, I teach there for, let's say, 30 years, and not too many classes doing that program. Why? They're not able to, because one of the reasons is they don't have teachers. Amazing. They don't teachers don't teach them. Even the teachers in the program, they don't teach them. They only do the administrative work. They put them together to hand out the paper, hand out the material, let them figure out themselves. Usually it's very difficult. If the homeschool teachers or parents here can be supportive, can give the help to the children in the program, the students get a lot more out from the regular public school program. That's just what I get, when I see this.
So there's another question in the chat box. Can you skip grades during homeschooling, and how do you do that? So that's an interesting thing. I have friends who had, you might say that they skipped grades. It was more like they graduated early from high school, maybe a year or 2 early. They may have graduated at 16. So if they've covered all of the subjects that are required by New York State, and they've completed all those high school requirements, then they can finish high school early. Personally, my children could have done that, but I chose not to, because I felt like they needed more time to mature, and they wouldn't be ready to start college at 16. Every child is going to be different, but I just felt like I didn't want to do that with my children. So that's something to consider. It's, in a way, you want them to be ready if they go away to college and they leave home, right? You want them to be ready to make mature, sound decisions where they're not going to be harming themselves. They're not going to be doing something dumb, right? So that's something. So you can skip grades if you want to. If you say that technically skip grades.
Here, Martha, is the one question I saw earlier. He just wants to know, is there any downside of the homeschooling from your perspective?
Yeah. What do you think, Lydia? I'll toss it.
I mentioned this to you. I mean, the downside, somebody did mention it. It's some of that interaction, maybe from another student's perspective, but the kids can be also very disruptive. So I would say that's the only downside for me. But we have taken online classes where kids are disruptive, and he sees that too. So, so that I would say that's the only thing. I can't think of anything else.
Again, parents have a big role to play here, and they should see ahead what's coming, so they prevent that things to happen. So the best way to solve a problem is to prevent a problem. So parents has a role to play to avoid the so-called downside, you know.
Yeah. We have a couple more questions in the Q&A, Lydia.
Yeah. One is, how is debate team and math competition organized for homeschooler? I can't specifically talk about debate club and math competition, but I have brought my child to Model UN. Model UN, for example, has it on a middle school level and also a high school level. And you don't have to be a part of the school. You could go as an independent. So we have gone as an independent to Cornell. We have gone to like even Dalton School in the city. Bronx Science will host individuals as well. And there are several on Long Island. We haven't done those, but you could. So I would say the debate and math competition would be, there's something equivalent. I just haven't looked into it. Would you know?
Well, Math Counts was pretty simple. I just worked with the organization. They're used to having homeschool groups. You don't have to be a school. You can just say that you're a homeschool group and they give you the materials that you need to run your club. So it was really pretty simple. So you just get the materials, you find a place to meet, whether it's at the library or somebody's house, and you get a bunch of kids together and that's your math club. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah.
I also think you can do this way. So because of so-called debating math club, they're the extracurricular program, school run that after school. I think based on each district, the parents can call the school, talk to the coordinator. Can my child join your program after the school, the time? I think most of them will say yes. For example, I run a math club in my school. If anyone call me, can I join your club after school? I'll be more than happy to accommodate them.
Mr. Chen, I'm in your district. You know that, right?
Yeah. You can join. You're more than welcome,
So, so there's another question here that says, hi, I'm planning to homeschool my child for 8th grade and prepare for private high school admissions. How would homeschooling report cards work in that case and align with standardized school district report cards? So I would say that you don't need to worry about your quote unquote report card looking like the school district report card. Nobody's going to compare those. 8th grade is the grade that I put my child in school. We just had all of our documents that we were required to submit to New York State. So those quarterly reports basically just kind of gave people an idea of what he studied and if he was comfortable with the material. They probably looked more at the SSAT score, and interviewing is usually a part of it. So how they conduct themselves in the interview, how they speak to adults, that was part of it. But I really wouldn't worry about trying to make your quarterly reports look like the school report card. No one's going to compare those. They understand that homeschoolers have their own reporting system, and that's what they use. So. Lydia, what do you think? There's a question. Will it be too stressful for parents to teach their own kids?
There is a curve. There is a learning curve. I mean, I would lie if I said that the first 2 months when we started that we didn't cry. It was hard in the beginning, and especially during these pandemic times. So you have to really allow yourself that room to grow into it. I would keep a journal every day. Start out with a schedule that has some flexibility, but keep a journal of what works and what doesn't work so that you can tweak it all the time. And you will find that happy place. So it is stressful, and just be flexible, be open-minded, listen to your child, listen to yourself, and then, seek advice from other people. That's really important. When Martha stressed that, when you're homeschooling, you do need a group of people to kind of lean on that are in a similar situation. Yeah.
Great advice, Lydia. I love that journal idea. They're a really nice idea. Wish I had thought of that when I was homeschooling. That would have helped me maybe. But there's another question here. There are a couple in the regular chat box and then also in the Q&A. This question, how can I decide what material is the right one for my kid as well as meet the state standard? So the only standard that you have to meet is what is listed in the New York State regulations. So for elementary, they will list certain subjects that you have to cover. You just need to make sure that you choose curriculum for those particular subjects, and whatever curriculum you choose or however you want to learn that is your choice. It's wide open. So that's all that's required. So just remember, you don't have to be locked into anything. What you want here is your freedom to make decisions. That's the beauty of homeschooling. And if you're not taking advantage of that, then you're missing out on one of the best parts of homeschooling.
I would say that, but homeschooling does have parameters. It's not like a free-for-all. They do ask that you do 180 days worth of instruction. For up until, I believe, 6th grade, it's 900 hours. And from 7th grade to high school, it's 990 hours. Yeah.
But everything you do is homeschooling. So you'll meet those hours. Don't worry about it. Everything you do, you go out to the museum, that's homeschooling. You count it as something. You learn to give yourself credit for different things. So some other questions. So this is an interesting question. Lydia, can you talk about what was the very initial reason for all of you to choose homeschooling?
Oh boy, it was really academics. I was class mom for 2nd grade, and I went to the classroom a lot, and I just saw how disengaged my child was. And he was reading on grade level, but he wasn't doing his best. He just wasn't engaged. And I thought I could do better. It was 2nd grade, and I thought, you know what? Like Martha said, commit 1 year. I thought, I'm going to see if I can bring him to 3rd grade to where I think he should be. And especially since 3rd grade is when testing start. And I really wasn't sure how he was going to do on the test. So I gave it 1 year, and we've never looked back. So that's how it started.
That's sometimes what happens, right? For me, I actually did have my oldest in school up through 2nd grade, similar to Lydia, and I found that he was in a Montessori for 1st grade. And then by that time, my 3rd child was born. I didn't want to think about paying private school for 3 kids. So I moved him into the public school district in Huntington schools. And I would say just that his academic needs were not being met. He was not challenged. He was bored in 2nd grade. And no matter how much I tried to advocate for him, I spoke to the teacher, I spoke to the principal. I was up at the school a lot. They were sick of me. But they didn't, they couldn't meet his needs. I guess it was just the way things were structured. And I said to myself, I do not want to have to go through this every year. Every year I'm going to have to advocate for him and try to get him to a point where he's being challenged. I said, it's not worth it. I think we can do this better at home. So we did that. That was initially, I pulled him out for 3rd grade, similar to Lydia. And then by the time it was time for my daughter to start kindergarten, we were so into the homeschool lifestyle. I was like, forget it. I'm not sending her to kindergarten. And the 3rd one just joined us too. So that's how we started our homeschool journey. But you meet a lot of wonderful people in homeschooling. It's great to take that journey alongside other people. So there's a couple more questions. Lydia, there's one, do you assign homework to your kids and how much do you give them?
No, I don't assign homework. There is homework with each, and I just allow him to do it. So we're on a topic, on a subject. We aim for 5 a day. He just does his homework right there. So there is no homework, but there is always reading. Reading is huge in our house. So he'll start the day with devotions and journaling. Because writing is a part of being, if you want to foster reading, you have to foster writing as well. So that goes hand in hand. And then he reads the newspaper. He reads the local newspaper, Newsday, and then he reads New York Times. So I assign a lot of reading, I guess. So if I see him doing too much screen time, I'll say, did you read first? Usually like at least 3 or 4 chapters a day. And we also have a book club. So that tries to take away more from the screen time by reading. So that's my only homework.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah, it kind of in homeschooling doesn't make much sense to give homework. You do the subject, you do the lesson for the day. They don't need to do anything else in addition to that. They've learned what they need to learn for the day. So there's less busy work, I think. You just do the lesson that's planned and that's what they get done with. There's another question. There's a couple more questions. One is, I tried having a schedule for the kids each week, but it's difficult to have them follow the schedule. Can you share some tips on how to set up those routines and make it a habit for the kids? So I will say that it is not always easy. It does take a lot of work to set the routine and set the expectations. So give yourself some time. It's just like with anything else, to form a habit takes time. So you can try something like introducing a little bit at a time, like maybe one thing that you want them to do every day. So for example, Lydia has this great idea that her son reads the New York Times every morning. So if that's something that you want them to incorporate in their day, just start with that one thing first and do that for a while. Then build on that. And also, I would say, you know, we all need motivation. As I said already, I'm big on motivational projects or programs, and offer a reward, you know, and it doesn't have to be money. It could be something like, you know, you get to go out to eat with mom or with dad by yourself. So you earn your way to that prize. Or if it's that, you know, you want to go somewhere or get together, they want to get together with a friend, well, you can earn that. So just do it a little bit at a time, form those habits a little bit at a time. And it's probably just too much to try to just throw everything on them at once. So the schedules I showed you, that was over the course of many years, right? They developed that. And when they were little, we did, you know, we had a routine. It was easier because they listened to me. I had more authority. And so if you establish that when they're little, it does actually help when they get bigger. They don't really think, they do think, of course, think for themselves, but
otherwise,
they think less of, you know, of rebelling and not doing what you ask them to do.
Okay.
So there's a few more questions.
Good reading list sources. I would say, I'm actually a librarian. Make friends with your public librarian, the children's librarian for you, a children's librarian, and teen librarian for your kids. There's a lot of great online resources. There's so many different awards that are given, like Newbery Award for 3 to 5-year-olds. But not only the award winners, there's a lot of runner-ups that are fantastic, and all those lists are available online. There is the Newbery Award for YA readers. There are the Caldecott. There is Coretta Scott King for African American writers. And if you visit ALA, which is American Library Association, visit that website. They have separate lists for YA, for different genres. So I would say that.
Well, those are all great. You asked the right person, the librarian. All right.
There's another question they ask that if let's say a certain family decide homeschool up all the way to 7th grade or 8th grade, they want to transfer to high school. The transition, do you have any suggestions for them to go through the transition back to public school or private school in a group setting?
You know, I think it will be less of an issue than some people predict. If you are really an active homeschooler and you're really around other homeschoolers a lot, it's not really going to be, and you understand how to interact with people, you will figure out how to fit into a group setting. You know, at that age, 7th grade, 8th grade, everything is awkward for the kids, whether you've been homeschooled or whether you've been in school your whole life. Everything is awkward. They're all figuring it out. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you have to worry that your kid, you know, doesn't have it figured out. None of them have it figured out at 7th and 8th grade. It's just that phase of life. And my son, he did start in 8th grade. You know, I'll tell you that he failed his first test, literally failed. The teacher was nice and let him take it again. And he figured out what testing was all about, you know, and now he does fine. He understands what tests are. He also, you know, was a little bit tentative about how to make friends, but just like any other kid, you know, he figured it out. He was going to a new school. You figured out when to shut your mouth and when to open your mouth. And, you know, that's how you make friends. So it all worked out. It will work out if that's what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you just make sure that your kids are well-rounded. Martha mentioned that her kids being in orchestra. My son is also in orchestra at Queens College. So he sees a lot of kids. He knows how to navigate situations. He's also in Boy Scouts, in church youth group, on a hockey team. So they're able to figure it out. As long as you make sure that they have well-rounded activities, you know, where they're socializing.
Yeah. One more good question in the chat box that I think is probably a question for a lot of people. How do you keep the kids engaged? I find it challenging. Well, we all do. Don't worry. You're not by yourself. So some things I suggest, really, the more that kids are a part of their learning, the more that they are excited about learning, the more engaged they are. And then, of course, you know, if you can find more hands-on activities, if you can do some things with them, or perhaps you can find someone else who is an interesting person to them, whether it might be, you know, an older high school student or a college student who can do something with them, that might motivate them. Think about the kinds of situations that motivate your child and try to make opportunities for more of those situations to happen. And then there's always, you know, there's the group contact. So when you put all of these different ways of learning together, group activities, you know, you're making a decision or having a part in deciding about your learning, if you incorporate more hands-on activities, if you take trips around a certain area that you're studying, that keeps them engaged. You know, so you do a variety of activities, and that is how you keep them engaged. And everybody will be bored at some point. That's very natural. Nobody's going to be excited about learning every single day. That's just how life is, right? But there will overall, I think, be more engagement if you do some of those things.
Okay, our meeting starting at 8 o'clock. Right now, we almost run through 2 hours. We want to thank our speakers and give us a lot of information and valuable. And a lot of parents, I'm sure they appreciate, I appreciate, and want to thank the Long Island Chinese American Association. We thank all the people work behind the scene, 雪梅老师、张国栋，还有好多其他的人，无名英雄，谢谢大家。假如大家还有问题的话呢，我们这是 it's the beginning of the long conversation. We're going to continue the similar seminar. We'll be more than happy to have Martha and Lydia come back. Maybe
Also,
people to join us as well.
You can also join the WeChat group. There's a homeschool interest WeChat group. I guess you have to be invited. If you want me to invite you, you can look for me on WeChat. It's Martha Knaupp. You probably see my name right here. Martha, but no Chow, just Martha Knaupp and no space in between. You can find me on WeChat that way. I'm in the group. You can probably, if you know Shreme might be your friend. She can invite you into the group. Li Hong, are you in the group?
I'm in the group. 我们有一个微信群，假如大家有兴趣的话呢，可以加入这个群里面一起讨论。有时候有些问题，因为是同一的问题，没有必要重复回答，所以我们办一个讲座呢，可能回答大家好多问题，好吧？谢谢大家。
All right.
Okay.
Hey, thanks everyone. Have a good night. Thank you so much for coming.
Good night.
Good night.